everyone, and welcome back, and welcome to season two of Chatting with the Lightkeeper. I'm Edward, otherwise known as the Lightkeeper. I hope everyone has had a glorious summer, or if perhaps you're on the other side of the world, I hope your winter is going great, and that if you're in a place where you can enjoy my passion of skiing, that you've given that a try this winter. Anyway, now that the my summer sabbatical is over, it is time to get right back to it and record a new episode. Since I'm doing this on a Wednesday, I'm not sure what day of the week you'll be listening, but since it's Wednesday here, somehow a Winnie the Pooh quote is in my mind, and it's sometimes I wonder if it's true that who is what and what is who. Um, and that Winnie the Pooh quote kind of got me thinking about the lifestyle. And while the internet is actually amazing because it allows for access, people to have voices, new voices to appear in the lifestyle, old voices to share their wisdom, and it kind of got me thinking if you're newer, how do you know a good voice from a bad voice or a wannabe voice? It's got to be really hard. I mean, there are websites, there's blogs, there's discussion groups, all online. Plus, you still have, it's been around for years, the in-person community, and hopefully, the scourge of COVID is letting people feel more and more comfortable interacting with other people. Um, However, wherever your comfort level is, there's always, the in-person community if that is something that you feel comfortable with, not only just because of the wonderful joys of a pandemic, but just because sometimes it can be very hard to go to a gathering, especially if you're newer. But I guarantee it won't be that scary. It's not. Anyway, but finding good information, that's something that I thought about is got to be hard, especially if you're kind of bumming around going through blogs and maybe Reddit, subreddits, all those sorts of things where you really don't know. And after thinking about the Winnie the Pooh quote, I was tumbling along through some blogs and I came across a post. It wasn't a post by the original author. Their blog has disappeared, just vanished. So that's kind of a little bit of a red flag. But the blog was titled, 10 steps on how to spank, or 10 steps to spanking success, something like that. And it had a ton of shares and likes, and so I sat down to read it. And um, perhaps the author mistitled it or didn't really think it through, because it was more like the author sharing how they like to spank. And since spanking is one of my favorite kinks, we'll throw that right out there. I was curious to read it, and it kind of got me thinking that if the author had said this is what I like or how I like to do it, well, I wouldn't be sitting here talking with you about it today. But since it was titled and seemed to have the feel of a how-to guide, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And so I thought, let's talk about this. And really, the only way I thought about how to trying to talk about, misinformation or misintended information that's out there online. I thought about doing generalities, but I thought, I'm just gonna not attack, that's the wrong word. Um, bite into this writing, one step at a time. So the first bit on the spanking um, front is that they the author suggests that you adjust the intensity, and I'm going to quote, adjust the intensity of each spank at random so they can't prepare for the pain and don't know what to expect. Now, I understand that if that's how you like to spank and that's how your partner likes to be spanked, that's wonderful. Uh, not not gonna quibble there. My gripe here is that if you're new and you are thinking that this is an actual like how-to guide, like how to fix your car, only just with kinky spanking. Oh, okay. I've, never given a spanking or I've never received a spanking. This is what I should expect. And that is so not the case. I actually find that in my experience, and this is just my experience, um, that where I've enjoyed the fun for me and for my partners that I've spanked, that they needed a slow, rhythmic build-up to get things kind of going. It couldn't be random and it couldn't be hard and soft to start with. It had to be a rhythmic build-up to get their mind going in the right places. Um, and that is just something that I've experienced with everyone that I've had the experience with. So that kind of was a little bit of a warning to me that maybe they don't, you know, have a lot of experience. Maybe my experience is completely different too. That's also a possibility. But I think the key takeaway is that everyone enjoys giving a spanking differently and receiving it differently. So it's more how you do it, the rhythm or the intensity is dictated by both the spanker and how the spankee likes to be spanked. There isn't a right or wrong way to do it. There are right and wrong ways, wrong places to hit. Um, but those things all need to be discussed before there's playtime, especially if you're new. How do you like it? What don't you like? So it's sort of that one size fits all, do it this way. That really was a warning for me. So now we come to number two. And number two says if she's giggling or laughing, you need to spank harder. Um, Now that sounds great, doesn't it? Yep, if she's laughing at you and you're dominant and the person you're spanking is laughing at you, oh, you're doing it wrong and you really need to step up the wax. Yeah. That immediately brought to mind a case where a submissive at a munch was sharing a story, um, actually about how their consent was broken. Um, because believe it or not, there are submissives out there, um, and dominants and vanilla people that react to stimulus differently than the traditional person. Um, in college, a good friend of mine, his sister, if something horrible happened, even not horrible, something just that could possibly be a bad thing, it may not be. Let's say you slipped and fell on the ice, and it was icy, and you just slipped, fell, went down. Um, yes, it could be a funny situation, but her reaction to anything like that was laughter. That was just like how her brain was wired. Everything that was kind of a unexpected stimuli um, came as laughter. And I think the submissive who shared their story about having their consent violated had a similar thing because rather than react with the typical way you would expect with moans, yelps, ouches, maybe even some crying, the submissive, their reaction to the stimuli of being spanked was to giggle, laugh, um, and the dominant she was playing with, and this was a private setting, so there was no one to jump in and say, "Hey," um, started hitting her much harder because He felt that the reaction was meaning he wasn't hitting hard enough, or possibly even was angry that she was reacting that way. So quickly, the submissive, safe worded. But once again, she is laughing, giggling. So the dominant wrongly assumed the safe word use was because the submissive was joking because she was laughing. And so, yeah, it ended up being a bad situation. And the other bit about this, too, is that there's a saying somewhere out there about sex that says if you're not laughing at least once with the person you're having sex with, you're not having sex with the right person. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but every situation, especially when you're with somebody that you care for, humorous things happen. So, yes, it's okay for a submissive to laugh and giggle during play. It's okay for a dominant to laugh, giggle, during play because things that are naturally funny will happen. Um, and so it's important to communicate if you're submissive and you react by giggling and laughing. You've never been spanked and you are having your first experience and you kind of react to the stimuli by giggling and laughing, take a moment and explain to the dominant that this is just how you're reacting to it. You're not laughing at them. You're not laughing because of how hard or how they are hitting, spanking. It's just the way you're reacting to the stimuli. And as always, a safe word, when it's the red safe word, the stop safe word means stop this instant. Shouldn't have to say that, but unfortunately have to say that. So number three on this how-to guide um, explains that take breaks and pull her hair, choke her, or put your finger in her mouth, or whisper something naughty into her ear that remind her that you own her. Now, once again, breaks are good, especially if you're playing for a long time. Breaks are very good. In fact, take breaks, take water breaks. Wonderful things. Take bathroom breaks. Um, if especially if you're using bondage or restraints and you're playing over a little bit of a lengthy period, yeah, definitely take bathroom breaks because nothing ruins the mood of a bondage playtime when you have to stop to undo everything. So the person that's tied up has to go potty. So yeah, take breaks. That is always recommended. Um, Here's the thing. I'm going to assume that the author of this is talking about being in a committed relationship where, you know, things have already been pre-negotiated. The limits, soft and hard, have been negotiated. They're committed in a relationship. They no longer need permission to touch in a situation like that. But here's the problem. This, once again, is getting presented as a how-to guide. So if you've never ever experienced this, it's going to seem to you that to, you know, it's okay to choke your partner while you're spanking them. It's okay to, you know, to touch them and put your fingers, inside their mouth or inside other places. Um, and the thing is, very simply, that people need to understand is that a consent to spank someone, even a bare hand on a bare bottom, does not equal consent for that bare hand to touch any other part of the person you're spanking's bottom. It has to be negotiated and agreed to beforehand if it's okay or if it's not okay. And the other thing is, too, there are triggers involved here. Um, there are many submissives who do not like their hair pulled. There are many who do. There are many submissives who do not like to be choked. or have fingers stuck in their mouth or other places. Those can be 100% no-nos. So, unless this has been thoroughly talked about and agreed to in advance, it needs to be said that no, you cannot do that when you're doing a spanking. Consent is just for that spanking unless otherwise agreed to. And since the author brought up choking, which is also known as breath play, it's important to note that this is very dangerous. It can be very dangerous. So if the dominant does not know what they are doing, don't let their hand anywhere near your nose, mouth, throat, especially your throat. Um, and the other thing is, not only do they need to know what they're doing, they also need to know how to do rescue breaths, how to revive you if something goes terribly wrong. This is one of those things that is fairly commonly seen in the lifestyle. Many people have fantasies about it, both dominants and submissives and switches as well. I always seem to leave out the switches, and I apologize. Um, but it's something that you need to be very careful with. And if you do it with a partner, it has to be someone you trust explicitly, and you have to make sure that they know what they're doing. And if, goodness gracious, something goes really wrong, they know how to try or have the skills to try to fix the really wrong. So that's an important note. All right, now we are going to hit number 4. And number 4 says make sure she can't see your hands. Uh, that way, they cannot prepare mentally for each spank before they get it. Um, yeah, once again, if this is the way the author likes to spank and their partner likes to be spanked, wonderful. Not a problem with that at all. However, many submissives, they need to see your hands. They need to mentally prepare themselves for it. And it's just one of those things where it's showing a lack of communication between D and S type here, that you have to know your partner, what they like, what they need, and if you just assume that this is the gospel, then you're going to have problems. So, and if you're, the one thinking about receiving the spankings, no, it does not have to be this way. You can say to a D type, hey, I need to see your hands. I need to be in a place where if I want to see, I can see. It's all a matter, really, it's a matter of personal preference. There isn't a true way to do it. And yeah, so I know I'm probably sounding a bit repetitive with that line, but I think it's important to note. All right, we are almost over the hump here. We're hitting number 5. Um, and I kind of had to edit this a little bit because I endeavor to not say words that some people would think really crass, so or offensive or pornographic. So number 5 is caress her butt and private parts. You can probably assume, what words I might have, you know, might have changed there. Anyways, um, once again, caressing with consent is wonderful. It's amazing, especially if the spanking play is going to be of an extended nature, or if the spanking has had some heavy impacts. Caressing is very, very nice. Um, but once again, the person giving the spanking must have the consent to do the caressing. It's that simple there. Now, I want to touch on the touching of private parts. And I don't mean touching an old VHS copy of the movie about Howard Stern. Perhaps I'm just, one of the few ones old enough to remember that not Oscar award-winning movie. Um, but consent is so important that it's not okay to, if you're giving a spanking, just assume that you're going to be touching private parts. This is something that I have heard over and over from submissives where a dominant somehow assumes giving a spanking means that they can touch their private parts because they're spanking and their hand is kind of naturally in that area. So, the private parts must be fair game. It is not. And without explicit consent before play, don't ever do that. Um, so, anyway, at this point, I also kind of need to pull out my little soapbox. Um, And so bear with me. It's not that big of a soapbox. We won't be up on it for too long. And it's not that high. So if you're afraid of heights, don't worry about it because I am too. So anyway, um, uh, one thing that's kind of gotten under my skin as we've gotten through halfway through is that this how-to guide is naturally assuming that all submissives are female and that all dominants, or at least the people giving the spankings, come equipped with baloney ponies. That spanking somehow is man on woman. Man spanks woman. Woman likes it. I'm sorry, I don't know if that was a good caveman voice or not. Um, but it's a huge pet peeve of mine to see when somebody writes a how-to guide that they don't understand that all roles in the lifestyle can be filled by people regardless of their gender, sexual orientation, all that stuff. It doesn't matter. This is a very open-minded and accepting place. It is not the 1950s where man, goes to work, makes money, wife takes care of house and kid. It's not that way anymore. If that's what you want in a relationship, that's wonderful. You should be able to have it. But we're not in the 1950s anymore. Um, so it's something to notice in lifestyle pieces that it's one thing if somebody is saying I like or they're coming from sharing their own personal things because it's going to reflect their gender, their sexual orientation, when they're reflecting who they are. But when they're talking about um, overall things, and I know I probably am not 100%, I don't do it 100% of the time, and allow my own orientation to 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 come through. But I try to be as neutral on that, and because any gender, any orientation can take any role they wish to. All right. So now that we're through that, we're halfway through the list. So I think now would be a good time to take a quick pause and come back after this message from my sponsor, and we'll finish the second half of the list. So stick with me, and I'll be back with number 6 in a flash. All right. Thank you very much for listening to that brief message. And we left off at number 6. And and I hope I'm not sounding like the old joke, Pete and repeat are in a boat fishing. Pete falls overboard, who's left in the boat? And you wait for the person to say repeat, and then you start with Pete and repeat are in a boat fishing. Okay. So I hope it's not coming across that way. I know I've made the same point a few times, but I think it's important that we do that as we go through these. So number 6 is keep her in the same place and don't allow her to walk about or wiggle around or even stretch her legs. Once again, if that's your jam, rock on. But if you're approaching this as somebody who is newer, no, that doesn't always work. One size fits all. It is not. Many submissives will need to get up and stretch their legs. They may need to wiggle. Um, I can remember back you know, in my days when I lived on the other side of the state and in the local in-person community, there was a submissive whose nickname self, you know, they chose the nickname of Wiggles because that's how they responded. to a lot of things during play is that they would wiggle about. Uh, so obviously, that submissive wiggles would not be a good fit for this dominant who is writing this guide because that's what they do. So yeah, it it's one size doesn't fit all, and that bit of advice once again requires conversation. And if you're newer and you want to get up and move around, you need to wiggle, do it. Yeah, that is not a hard and fast spanking rule that everyone must follow. Number seven. This one makes me smile. In fact, I'm breaking a rule by smiling. Don't smile or make jokes about the situation. You're her dominant, so act like one. Ooh, don't you just see the stern, dumb face with the gentleman typing that when he was, that stern, menacing look many dominants use as their profile pictures. I'm not sure whether they're trying to communicate sternness or they're really constipated. And so the joke is I call it constipated dumb face. And when I read that, I was giggling to myself. So God, I hope that doesn't mean somebody's going to spank me harder. Um, but seriously, why so serious? Yes, there is times during play when it can be fun to be stern and demanding and all of those emotions. But you know what? There is also times to laugh, to giggle, to have fun. And some of the most hilarious times can happen when you're playing and you're trying to be that that gruff or stern individual and something uproariously funny happens. Hey, you gotta laugh at it and you gotta laugh with it. And sometimes even laugh at yourself. Um, but life is too short. Laugh, giggle, joke, be merry. There's plenty of time in life to be super serious, but no matter how super serious you are, we're all going to end up in the same place, and that's dead. So let's enjoy it. Let's laugh. And lastly, that constipated dumb face thing. If you're a stern individual, that's who you are. And there's nothing wrong against reflecting that. But so many guys, especially guys, try to have that super serious, I am super intense look in their little profile DS pictures, and you can just see the insincerity of this the sternness, and so they do look constipated. Next time you start looking in your website and you see a couple of Dom's pictures, trust me, you'll see constipated Dom face somewhere there. So yeah. Anyway, life's too short to be serious all the time, and being somebody's dominant doesn't mean you have to be stern so that they know it. Okay, number eight. Don't let her lead the situations. It's better to just spank instead asking things like, "Should I spank harder, or is that good?" Hmm. Yeah. How about no? Um, uh, the reason I say no is this is a how-to guide. So the thing is this is for people who have never ever or are newer and don't have a lot of experience. So even if you're experienced and you're with a new partner, these are valid questions to ask during play. If it's your first time spanking a new partner, yes, it's not super sexy to say, "Is that good? Would you like it harder, softer?" But you need to. You can be in tune to how their nonverbal communication is responding, but you need to actually have these conversations. Um, it's not letting the submissive lead. It's not letting the submissive top from the bottom. What you're doing is you are making it a fun and safe experience for both you, the spanker, and for the spankee. And that should not be discounted ever. Um, So while you're learning a new partner, you need to have these unsexy conversations. And it is not the submissive leading the conversation. And in fact, if you're spanking too hard because you don't want to ask these conversations, the submissive is going to more than likely use their safe word or gesture and tell you to stop. And boy, having a scene stopped, I would imagine, especially the first time with somebody, that's going to be even more unsexy than saying, "Is that okay? Is that good?" So, yes, yeah, no, 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 no. And finally, we all know that the submissive is always the one really in charge. The reason? They can say no, they can revoke their consent to anything at any time for any reason. So even though you're Sir Domly Dom, that submissive, they are in control because they can say no. They can use their safe word and everything stops. So, yeah, that one, yep, chuck that roll right in the mucket bucket, and out the door it goes. So you have to be willing to have those unsexy conversations, especially when you're new or with a new partner. Period. End of story in my book. All right, we are at number 9. All right, so on this one, let's all get our canoes out because we are gonna quote get a paddle or other spanking tool to use sometimes. Hands are great, but it's nice to spice things up with something new. And it is, you know, spicing things up is fantastic. Every relationship needs to be spiced up from time to time. Obviously for kinky folks, spicing it up is different than what it would be spice wise for a vanilla person. Um, but here's the quick thing: spicing things up requires consent. Once again, before play. My favorite toy, if you will, to spank with, it's not really a toy. Um, I guess maybe for a chef, the wooden spoon. Absolutely my favorite spanking tool, toy. I'm not sure which word you want to use, tooly toy, is a wooden spoon. However, um, in a past relationship, the submissive that I was in a relationship with, uh, wooden spoons were a trigger for her. She never fully shared the story, and all I'll share with you is that she had a horrible experience receiving parental discipline with a wooden spoon as a child. And it was to the point where, obviously she was a grown woman. And so she had cooking utensils in her house. But when it came to spoons for cooking, you would not find a wooden cooking utensil anywhere. It was anything but wood. So I mean, there wasn't even a wooden spoon to cook with in her house. That's how much of a kind of a trigger they were. So going into that partnership, I knew that hey, my favorite spanking tool, hey, that's out the window. Not gonna happen here. It's something I'm never gonna be able to persuade her to use, to try, to do just one time for me because I like it. No, but that didn't matter because they are amazing, and so yeah, I knew that going in that was not going to be something that was ever going to be a part of the fun and game side of things. So you have to have consent. You have to understand your partner, because some of those things that we change things up with may well be something the that the other person doesn't want, doesn't like, doesn't any of those. So it's very important that communication happen and everything be agreed to beforehand. So yeah, all right. And I guess before we go on to the last one, don't ever assume that your submissive wants to try you know, a paddle. They may not want you to play ping pong on their bottom. Um, maybe they have a thing against riding crops, so you playing jockey, with their butt is out of the question. It's really important that when you're going to introduce a different or new implement to playtime, that you discuss it beforehand. So, anywho, let us move on to number 10. And now, number 10, believe it or not, I agree with. This person, said something completely awesome. So, yeah, we're not going to hear the Pete and repeat from me here this time. Um, Number 10 is after the spanking session is over, make sure to give her lots of hugs and aftercare. Um, yeah, aftercare is it's super important, both for the dominant and the submissive. No matter what side or the spanky or the spanker, if you're not taking the DNS labels, aftercare it's amazing. If you're in a relationship, it is an amazing time. It's an amazing connection. At least in my experience, it is during the time of aftercare. For me personally, aftercare is the best part of play. Absolutely, the best is aftercare. Um, i- i- but one quick thing on aftercare. Well, it's probably not going to be too quick, but I sometimes think we should retitle it before care because planning for aftercare starts before you play. Um, you have to understand what you need for aftercare. If you're brand new to everything and this is your first go round, say with spanking, um, and you've never really experienced things beforehand, you're going to want to talk about ideas for aftercare, things you may like. Maybe it's cuddling afterwards, taking a shower together or a bath, a soothing lotion, and aftercare can be needed for dominance too. Don't think that it's just submissives that can struggle after the endorphins of play go away. It can affect dominance too. So that's why the aftercare time of being together, especially if you're partnered, is so amazing because yes, the dominant is, taking care of their submissive, making sure their needs are met and they're, you know, reacting well to the after stimulus time. But at the same time, it's also calming the dominance, that whole chemical thing that happens in everyone's brain when we're excited. So it's a mutually beneficial time. And so it's something that there needs to be a plan for what's going to happen. How long do we think we're going to need to do things like this? Sometimes it might be 20 minutes, sometimes it might be the whole night. Maybe if you play really intensely on Friday, you kind of both need to be in aftercare mode through Sunday, maybe even longer, depending on the play and the people involved. So aftercare is truly, not only is it amazing, but it's so important. So yes, number 10, completely agree with. So fantastic advice there. Um, so anyway, we have made it through this how-to guide that I used it as an example. Um, and I think the key takeaway is, especially if you're new, no matter how reputable a source seems or how amazing a source seems, oh, well, it's gotten a lot of likes, or a somebody that I think of highly as a fellow submissive or a fellow dominant has said that this person sometimes has some good advice. Take and kind of get other people's opinions. Never ever rely on just one person's opinion or viewpoint on how to do something. There's so many right ways to do things within this lifestyle. It's so important to get diverse opinions, and also through getting those diverse opinions, it will help open your eyes to when you come to something that is perhaps well intended. Like I really believe that this writing was well intended. It was just misconstrued as a how this person likes to spank rather and has was kind of turned into for them a how-to guide, which it shouldn't have been. It should be like the you know here's my 10 favorite ways to do a spanking, or the 10 things I like about doing a spanking. So you really have to you know what is who and who is what, and choose the sources that you go to for information wisely. I mean, on the internet, anybody can throw out a shingle and be an expert. I mean, look at me. I threw out my shingle. Um, so yeah, and I don't consider myself an expert. I just have seen a few rodeos or two, and just want to share my thoughts. So just to be clear on that, I don't consider myself in the expert range. I appreciate anybody who does say that to me, but yeah, it's not something I consider for myself. But yeah, go out, get opinions, because you have to be able to learn how to separate, as the old saying goes, the wheat from the chaff. So just always please be mindful of where you get your information, who the sources are, where the sources are, and then get other opinions. Don't necessarily go by one thing and think, yep, this has got to be how it's done, because it certainly is not. And one of the things that I truly love about the lifestyle is you can take from, somebody over there, their idea, and then there's somebody else with a different idea over here, and you can go over there, take their idea, and blend them together to make them your own. There's no, it's not home improvement. It's not, step one, step two, step three. You can create it however you want to create it for yourself. So please be mindful of where you get for your information, and never forget that as you grow and learn in the lifestyle, you make it your own. Um, so take from here, borrow from there, invent on your own, put it all together, and make what works for you work. Um, while there are a few wrong ways, there are far more right ways, because what works for everybody works for them. And so, anyway, this point, I am going to say farewell, and I look forward to seeing you in probably be about 2 weeks, and we'll have another podcast up and out for your listening pleasures. So until then, stay safe and enjoy life. Thank you for listening.